We are back talking NASCAR after the one and only official week off in the NASCAR Cup Series season for 2022 as we preview this week's event at Nashville Super Speedway, what is it, Ally 400?
The Ally 400.
Ally
yep.
400. And this is a mile and 1.33 mile concrete track. Is that what we're dealing with here?
Yes, kind of a hybrid Darlington meets Dover, if you want to say. It's not quite a mile and a half, so I mean it looks like Kansas, Vegas, those type as far as shape, but it's not quite as big, and it's concrete like you'd see at Bristol and Dover.
So to handicap this race, it would be fair to say we'll take a look at Dover this year, and this race last year.
Kind of, yeah.
Obviously, there's a new car, so
yes, and I would throw Darlington in there because last year, as an example, I should have had this loaded up. Here it is. Last year, Kyle Larson, he dominated Dover. He won at Bristol on the concrete part, and he was good at Darlington. This year, and he won Nashville. This year, he was 6th at Dover and 36th in Darlington. So I'm getting ahead of myself. He's going to be one of my fades, but it seems like Bristol, Dover, and Darlington last year correlated well to the Nashville race. So,
okay.
I think, to me, I'd look at those, and I'd throw a little bit of last year in it, only in the sense it's the only other time they've been on the track. So the resin I read is going to be back on the track in the same spots, which they said could help the racing, but we also saw Kyle Larson lead 264 laps last year. So I'm not sure how much it really helped, but no. Yeah, I would say Dover and Darlington as your two probably closest, and you might sprinkle Bristol in there only because it's another concrete track.
But we didn't see Bristol this year yet, so
exactly, and it's a different car. So I would look at Dover and Darlington.
And as far as Chevy, if we're leaning towards a manufacturer, we would lean towards Chevy, wouldn't we? I mean, they were top 3 at Dover, and they were top 3 in this race last year.
Yeah, I'd say Chevy or Toyota. Toyota, in a sense, they weren't bad. I don't know if I trust Truex or Hamlin, but you also have Kyle and Bell right there. So I would say those are probably the top 2 out of the 3. Ford, maybe punt on. Might find a little bit of value in some Ford drivers, but yeah, Chevy for the obvious reasons. I mean, remember in Darlington, they should have won too. Logano just unnecessarily shoved Byron out of the way in the last 2 laps. They were coming to the white flag, or they would have won all 3 races.
All right, before we break down the race, and obviously every time we handicap a race, there's a combination. We'll go over the odds, and there's always some fantasy introspection as well. And our fantasy teams have really gotten all jumbled up. So there's only 220 points between first and third.
It was and I was third for most of the year, and it was around 900. So it's definitely
you've won 3 of the last 5 weeks.
Yep, I'm 150 behind you.
Including
I just
the
put
last
that article
2.
up the other day. Yep, I looked all of my drivers minus Almirola, and granted, for my team right now, Kyle Larson, he hasn't won because he was on your team when he won. But other than Almirola, they've all won. They finally have hit their stretch now that this is kind of what I was wanting. That's why I've been staying kind of firm, other than our trade that we made, was I just kept seeing eventually these guys, Hamlin's now won twice. Logano's now won twice. I knew they'd start coming. Chastain's won twice. Which is still a possibility, we get more than 16 or fewer winners in the regular season, all my guys right now are going to be in the playoffs. So I'm going to have 7 guys in the playoffs, which helped me because our playoff points, obviously, or the points in the playoffs are a little more scaled for us too. So I'm feeling good now. Earlier in the year, it was a little rough, but now these guys are starting to hit their stride.
And it's kind of interesting that you have 4 more. Well, you have 3 more wins than I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm leading you.
You are. You got a good one in that the 600, didn't you?
Yes.
Because you double points race
I had
really
a
helps out.
major. I had like 7 of the top 10 drivers in that race.
And a
the
double points race. Yeah. Yep. And then CJ's team is kind of faded back, like we all thought would happen. We'll see if. I mean, he's got 3 drivers yet to win. That
He's
I feel
still
like
got
Truex,
good drivers. I mean, with
He
Kyle
does.
Busch, Elliott,
Kyle.
and Byron.
Yep. I think those 3, as I'm saying, I could probably potentially have 7 of the playoff spots. I think CJ. I mean, you could make a case he's got at least 3 of the round of 8 drivers between Kyle, Elliott, Byron, and you never know what Truex is going to happen. He could have half the round of 8, which would help his team dramatically
Kyle's
move up.
130 points better in our point standings than the second place driver, which is Denny Hamlin.
Yeah,
you're top driver, 130 points. So that's a big gap.
It shows. Yeah, and he's 3rd in overall points. He's not even in the point standings in the overall series. So it shows you how wild this year is, and I feel like it's only going to get wilder as the season continues.
I think so, and that's what we're hoping for. So,
yep.
So we have Nashville this week, Road of America, and Atlanta, which is like a mini Daytona.
Yep.
And then you have New Hampshire, Pocono, Indianapolis.
And Indy's the road course.
That is, road course. So that is real, and these are races that we're only going to see once this season.
Well, and you could go after Indy to Michigan, same way. You're seeing that one once.
Once, yeah. So it is going to be quite interesting, this stretch here. And
yeah, the next 7 weeks, they're all our first and only visits on these tracks all year.
How many separate winners do we have?
12.
12 separate winners, 16 in the playoffs.
Yep.
So
you got to be sweating a little bit right now. And they usually you think the June, you not points race in a sense of I've got to win, I need a points race my way in. But Hendrick admitted that after Sonoma that, hey, I needed those few spots. He finished 5th. It's his first top 5 since his Daytona 500 win. But he's looking at the sense Kurt Busch was 18th. That right now, those are the bottom 2. So let's say you get 17 winners. It's the bottom is bumped out.
Yeah.
Right now, that's the bottom. Because Denny Hamlin, granted, some people, well, Denny Hamlin's 21st in points. He's got 2 wins.
Yeah, he's not
you
going
go
anywhere.
by the amount.
No.
Yeah, he's pretty much locked himself in. So you've got a battle also between Austin Cindric and Kurt Busch and Suarez, because he's right there with them, as the bottom. You don't want to be that bottom guy right now. In the past, like I said, you don't really – it's been threatened, but as we get to this time of year, like I said, people get hot. We've not seen that this season. So
that's why this stretch of races at these tracks could really screw things up even more.
Yeah. I mean, Kevin Harvick's 12th in points, and he's not even in right now. He's literally 12th in points, but because the guys behind him have won, he'd be out. So, and he could win. Truex hasn't won yet. Blaney hasn't won yet. So there's 3 more guys right there that, you can make a strong case. Well, now you're at 15 different winners. So buckle up. And Daytona is the regular season finale.
Okay, yeah, that's just a really cool schedule change that they made. So I did hear that I forget what it was for, but I did hear something about I think that they're taking a look at the schedules for next year.
Yep.
It seems that they're not surprisingly satisfied with those awful viewing races that because they got good exposure, whether it was through ratings or the fans were there and it was a sellout, whatever the case may be. And I think the only negative that we haven't heard anything yet, have we heard yet whether they're returning to Bristol for the dirt?
We've not heard yet.
Okay.
They've mentioned that. I think we will. The way they talked about, I think it's just a kind of preconceived notion it's going to happen. The only ones we know, the 3 that are in concrete now are the Clash is coming back to LA Coliseum.
The Clash, yes. That was so exciting that's just about California and getting new fans there physically at the racetrack. That's it. Because anybody watching that stuff is just terrible.
Well, and it makes me feel, and again, it depends on domes and warm weather, cold weather climates, is I don't know off the top of my head where the Super Bowl is at this year. Because what helped that, I think, is that LA hosted the Super Bowl and it was on Fox. So it's kind of the perfect storm. So you had
what was the schedule difference?
This year, so the Clash was in the Coliseum.
When was it?
And that was early February,
Okay.
right before the Super Bowl.
Right before
it was a week before the Super Bowl.
Okay.
So, and it was on Fox. Super Bowl was on Fox too. So you had a lot of cross promotion.
Yeah.
Super Bowl is in LA, Clashes in LA.
But you know how
it's
things go. The first time around, it's hey, what's novelty? Let's see what it's like.
Yep.
That factor alone that you're just about to talk about is also going to be another reason why I can't imagine everything is going to be anywhere near as awesome as it was last year.
Which is my point I was going to get to. I don't know where the Super Bowl is this year. At the top of my head, I know it's out there. But I'd like to see maybe the Clash follow the Super Bowl. Can you play in this? I mean, you're using a football stadium and use it because obviously the Super Bowl is either going to be on, which I think now ESPN, ABC's back in the mix, but it was Fox, CBS, or NBC. Well, Fox and NBC have NASCAR rights. Can't you have the station that's airing the Super Bowl, other than the year it's on CBS, air the Clash and have the Clash in the Super Bowl city? Because that would make sense to build off of each other. Because like you said, I think it was a perfect storm last year. This year, is it really going to be as fun the second time around? Yeah, I would use another football stadium then.
Arizona.
But, it's in Arizona. Well, there you go. You can open the roof and play on the football field there. And other than, your final race is in Phoenix, which that's one of the other two that are locked in stone. We're going back to Phoenix next year for the championship.
Yeah.
And the Daytona 500 is always the Daytona 500. So everything else is open. They talked about maybe some more radical changes. They want to keep spicing it up, but my question is, how much can you keep spicing it up if these races that you're coming to are starting to become hits? It's like, well, you're not going to go more than 36 points paying races. That's already, in my opinion, too many. So if something comes on, something has to come off. And there's rumors of possibly having Chicago get a street course race. So if it comes on, the question was asked, well, are you now watering down the road courses? Because that'd be 8 or 7 points.
Well, what's the difference between a street course and a road course?
Streets are literally run on the streets of like downtown.
So how do you think that would take as far as for a stock car?
I don't think it'd be very good. Only because a stock car is so big, it's going to be – street course races are notoriously hard to pass anyways. We see them. They're tough to pass in an Indy car or an F1 car. Now imagine a stock car on these streets. But I get the allure of a street race is you're kind of saying we're bringing the series to you because you can run in downtown urban markets.
What would the stock car be like? I know how good they've made the new car and how tough it is, but you put a stock car in a street. I mean, come on. Those cars aren't going to break down at some point?
They're going to be – to me, it's going to be like almost a shit show where people are going to be – the only way you're going to pass is going to wreck somebody.
So,
it's going to be hard to pass. Thing.
And maybe we'll see all sorts of cars getting into all sorts of trouble.
And to be honest, because I've covered a lot of street races on the IndyCar side, 90% of the people at that race are not there to watch a race. They're there for the party. They don't care. Oh, there's cars out here. They're on these city streets that I drive on every day, but they're not there. So it helps bring, maybe you'll capture some fans that way, and it looks good on TV. Look, there's 180,000 people in the streets but the racing isn't very good.
NASCAR doesn't care about that. So it's perfect.
Exactly. So it's probably going to happen.
Yeah.
I think that's the next radical move.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing with street course races, which I've seen on the IndyCar side and F1, is they're hard to make money. They're hard to get past the first contract because, the Miami Grand Prix F1. Did you know they actually lost millions of dollars this year? It was sold out. All the suites sold out. The tickets were at crazy high priced because it costs that much money. Because you got to think, if you're going to shut city streets down, that costs a lot of money to get involved. You got to have permits, zoning. You got to pay.
It's basically a check to market your sport. This is an expense.
It's a cost of business. Yeah, because you've got to have a big sponsor paying you a lot of money, and your ticket prices are usually really high because you got to have, if you got high expenses, you got to have revenue coming in from
Sure.
somewhere. Well, ticket prices usually so, and there's not a lot of there's not a lot of places. Plus, here's the other factor: you have to build the track. So you have city streets out here. You got to build walls and fences, and that takes. It's not like you just show up in one weekend and do that. Usually, you're doing that 6 to 8, 10 weeks in advance.
Do you think Chicago is the right place?
I do, in a sense. There's a lot of people that live in Chicago. You'll get over 100,000 people probably there, but I just don't think you're going to put on, for the pure racing thing, you're not going to put on a good show. It's just more of a spectacle. It's a high-speed parade.
So 2024.
I'm thinking more of that. Now, the rumor, Adam Stern, his friend of mine, SBJ, reported this, and usually doesn't report things that aren't true, that they're talking about doing this, and they're looking at bringing it on to replace Road America as soon as next year, because Road America's contract's up after the date. They're thinking 4th of July weekend, streets of Chicago, near Lake Michigan, win-win. I get it. But again, like I said, you got to have zoning, permit. Yeah. You got to have a lot of paperwork. And the fact that not a lot of that's leaked yet, and the 4th of July weekend is next weekend, in a year you're going to pull this off, that's going to be hard to do. Yeah. I think 24 makes a little more sense than jumping on 23 because, again, hey, I'm all for if you want to keep Road America, and I'm sorry if there's any people from Texas watching. If we want to just punt on Texas and never go back there and replace it with Chicago, what's the difference, right? You're going to have more people. There's not going to be any passing, but you're in a better market, to me, in Chicago than going to a hot Texas track where it is probably the worst track on the schedule. I'd be okay with that.
All right, so let's get to it. And hey, we've actually been doing pretty good with our picks. I'm on a 3-race win streak. You're on a 2-race win streak. Now Kyle Larson was the heavy favorite at 4-1. I've seen on one of the sports books his odds have moved up closer to 6-1.
Yep.
But we had it officially at 4-1, and at that price, you and I forget it. CJ actually decided to put his most money on Kyle Larson this week. So he still feels pretty good about Larson, but I just can't go because like we just talked about before it's just a different car. We're not going to see him dominate. I doubt it. Like he did last year. He was also 6th at Dover this year. Okay. So that's nothing special. We know how good he was at this type of racetrack last year, but that's not this last year. This is a different Kyle Larson.
Yep.
And he doesn't even have his crew chief as well, and that's an issue. So
it is.
Yeah,
it is. This year has proven it's nothing like last year. I mean, last year Hendrick and the year before were bar none the best team on road courses. This year they were 0 for 2, and they went 8, 9, 15, 16 at Sonoma the last time out. I mean, Larson, and he just said that without Cliff Daniels, they work well together. You don't have him on your pit box, and we've seen with this car. A lot of adjustments need to be made. We've got an extra practice session this weekend because NBC's taken over the schedule. They wanted an additional practice, so we'll practice Friday and then qualify on Saturday. I think you'd want your crew chief there for that, because you're going to have a longer session to make more adjustments, and he doesn't. He's got 1 top 5 in his last 6 races on the year. He's not driving like Kyle Larson of last year. So I just felt like for him to be the favorite, too steep for me when you can get a lot better odds, double those odds behind him.
Now, how many? Well, I'll let you know. We had 6 drivers that we all agreed on this week. That's a pretty sizable amount.
That is, I guess, Kyle Busch.
Yep.
Chase.
Who?
Elliott. Chase Elliott.
Yes.
Chastain.
Yes.
3.
That's it for the favorites.
Harvick. 4. Suarez.
No. You were the only one that took Suarez.
What about Stenhouse?
We all took Stenhouse. And since he's my fantasy driver, I don't like that's a jinx for me. So I'm not happy about that. But we'll get into him later.
Yeah, well, that's 5, right? So we have one more?
One more.
I'm torn between Bell or Haley. I'm going to say Bell.
You and I have Bell and Haley. No CJ.
So you didn't have either. Okay. Almirola?
No. Jones.
No. Oh, Eric Jones. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, another long shot at 100-1. So we all like the 7-1 shots. Kyle Busch, Chastain, and Elliott. And we all have pretty much the same strategy. I did put a little bit more on Kyle. I have 25 on Kyle because I really kind of just feel that, he's just doing everything but winning that you just feel like. And let's remember that he led 103 laps at Dover. And the only reason that he probably didn't win was when he got caught on pit road, him and Bowman.
Exactly.
Otherwise, he could have won that race. He's also very good at Dover. He's very good at Bristol. So I can't imagine he's not going to fare well here. 11th last year at this track. But yeah, that's why I just like Kyle a little bit more than the other two. What about you? If you had to pick one of the three, who would you go with?
Oh, Kyle. Yeah, I mean, he's got 3 top threes his last 4 on the season. He's won 2 Xfinity races there, including last year, which this package is going to look closer to that Xfinity package because there's more horsepower compared to what they had last year. And he's also got 2 truck wins. So he's won 4 times in Nashville. And I look at his 11th last year, and we all talked then that Toyota was a little bit down last year. Now I feel like they're better. And you're getting a guy that I think right now is the closest, other than winning races, of getting hot. We've not seen this really all season of somebody rattling off top threes, top fives like this. And the only reason he isn't 4 top threes in his last 4 is Toyota and Gibbs are not good on road courses this year. Now it's the only result. That's the outlier. So, and that's nothing you can take over to Nashville. So I feel like after a week off, time to reset, recharge, for between those 3, I like him.
Yeah, Chastain, he was second in this race last year. He led 86 laps at Dover this year. It was really down to Elliott and Chastain until Elliott just drove away from him with about, I think, 50 laps to go or something like that. But he still finished third. Elliott, meanwhile, had an incident in this race last year, which is the reason that he had such a bad result. But let's remember, he's won Dover twice. He won Dover this year, as we just mentioned. So, yeah, it just made a lot of sense to go with Chastain and Elliott as well, especially since we're not taking or putting any money on Larson.
Exactly. That's why I punted on Larson, too. 1, his results, and 2. And Elliott, you got to remember, he was 5th in Darlington this past year. Obviously said he won at Dover. And Chastain, if you remember, was leading Darlington and ran really good. And I remember talking in our show that when the asphalt, the patched part, he just lost it on that wreck. Remember, he was leading in the final stage.
He won the second stage, yeah.
Yep. So I think those should be your 3 favorites over Larson. But the fact you can get them pretty much double the odds of Larson that opened up yesterday, yeah, those are – it's hard to pick between the 3, but I give the slight nod to Kyle just because he's won there 4 times. But, yeah, and plus Trackhouse, I mean, they're coming off of a win in Sonoma, so the morale on this team seems pretty big too.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, as far as the strategy this week to wager, I would feel comfortable myself just going with those 3 and even just taking a couple of drivers, like the 20-1 guys that we'll get into, and a couple, in a Stenhouse, Haley kind of thing. Just throw a few bucks there, but go all in on those top 3. And one of those 3, you feel pretty strongly that they might have a good chance to win. So,
yeah, this is. I almost last night making my picks because we'll get into these guys. Some of those guys are just almost too good to be true at the odds they win. Like, I'm gonna have to pick them, but I almost went all in on these 3. I almost I'm gonna take these 3 and win some more money because it's like it was a few years ago, and it was Truex, Kyle, and Harvick. You knew one of those 3 is probably going to win. You can kind of narrow down your picks. This is kind of in that realm, but because we've had 12 winners this year, it's still wide open. I feel like this would be the week that one of those guys that I feel good about and the long shots win. I didn't pick them and could have had even more money. So I went more guys than I should have, but we'll see.
Yeah, I didn't take any drivers between 10 and 15-1. So I didn't touch 6 of those drivers. You went with Hamlin and Reddick. CJ went with Byron and Reddick. You went with Hamlin, which, look, makes sense just because of the fact, if you look at it, Hamlin's always been good on the concrete racetracks. Yep. He was solid at Dover this year. And then he had that issue with the tire coming off his car. And then he got wrecked by Cody Ware. So if that doesn't, it was one of those things that we were talking about at that point, that everything was going wrong for Hamlin when you knew he had a winnable car. So that's what he had, a winnable car. So, but for me, it was just because I went heavy with the 3. I put more money on Kyle than you did. I didn't have as much to go with, so I didn't go Hamlin. Plus, that would be a third win for Hamlin. But again, it does make sense to include him in the list, especially since you're getting 10-1 instead of 7-1.
Exactly. That's the only reason I took. Cause the trends say he's going to finish 21st. He was 21st
Yeah.
at Dover, 21st at Darlington, 21st in this race last year. I'm like, usually those trends that add up to 21st actually ends up being a win. We're like, this is right in front of our face because, like you said, Dover, he had a top 5 car, but just the tire fell off, and then he came all the way back and then got wrecked. Darlington, top 5, got caught up in a wreck. So if we're talking that good about Kyle and Toyotas, I felt, for 10-1, what's the hurt? We'll go with him. But he was one of the guys, like I mentioned, I'd punt on him. But 10-1 for a guy that's won 2 races this year,
Yeah, sure.
And Reddick's good on concrete tracks. He's good on tracks like this too. I mean, he's run Bristol well. He always runs Darlington well. So I thought 15-1 or whatever. I think he's around 15-1.
Yeah,
couldn't hurt. Throw some money his way. Just again, we've had 4 first-time winners this year. Why not get a 5th right off the bat here in NBC's broadcast?
Now, CJ has Byron. He finished 3rd in this race last year, but he hasn't had a top 5 at his last 8 races since his Martinsville win. So, yeah. And that was the point of the season with Byron, that we were like, hey, he's got 2 wins. It's just a different William Byron. This is going to really be something, and I don't know what's happening. What's going on?
If not for Chase Elliott being good on the tracks we mentioned before, I would punt on the whole Hendrick camp this week, just because Bowman's got 1 top 5 in his last 10. He said Byron's 0 for his last 8 in top 5s. Larson's got 1 in his last 6. I just feel like, and that's one of my burning questions for Friday, is it time to maybe start being concerned about Hendrick? Because last year at this point, I wrote, are we putting too much emphasis on them sweeping the championship 4? Remember, we were talking about, are they going to get all 4 into the championship 4? Well, right now, I don't feel good about many of them getting to the round of 8. I mean, just right now, the way they're running, I think you might get 1, but that might be about it. So they've fallen off a little bit. Granted, the new car can change that, but they're not running well right now. And Byron, like you said, not 0 for his last 8 on top 5. I don't think you magically win.
You see, the difference with me, though, with why I took Bowman is because he's 20-1.
That's the only reason.
Byron's 12-1. And
Byron is too steep.
Yeah, that's why I know, not at 12-1. Not for me. CJ went with it, but out of the drivers we didn't touch, look at that level: Logano 12-1, Truex 12-1, and Blaney 15-1. Out of those 3, who would you prefer?
Logano, because he's won at Nashville before, in an Xfinity race, and you got to remember he won Darlington. He started on the pole and won Darlington early in the year, so. For 12-1, I felt Logano out of those guys probably your best safe pick, I should say.
Okay, now we go to those 20-1 shots, and I put money on all 3 of them: Bell, Bowman, and Harvick. You left money off Bowman. For me, look, Bell is just it's one of those things where you kind of feel that unless he goes into a slump, sooner or later, he's going to win.
He's got to.
Yeah, he's 4th at Dover this year, 9th in this race last year. Bowman, again, as I mentioned with Kyle, Bowman was right there with Kyle 1 and 2. They pit on pit road at Dover, and he still came back and finished 5th after getting stuck. But without that penalty on the caution on pit road, Bowman has a good chance to win the race at Dover. Even though he doesn't have a bunch of top 5s, he does have a bunch of top 10s. So I think I expect at 20-1 was the big deal for me. If he's 12-1, it's different. He's 20-1, and Harvick has 3 top 5s in his last 5 on the season, 5th in this race last year. He's very good at Dover. He's very good at Bristol. And the only thing that we need to see with Harvick, though, is he has to start leading laps. You can't usually win a race if you don't lead laps. So we need to see Kevin Harvick leading laps.
He's going to be one. I just don't feel good about his speed to win on pace, which is why his odds are there. But we've seen crazier things happen. You get a late race restart. But the other thing is, too, in order to win, you just have to be around. And like you said, he's been around lately. I mean, he was 4th at Darlington, 9th at Dover. He's turning things around on the season in general. I mean, 3 of his last 5, he's been in the top 4. And he's top 5 there last year. So for those odds, again, wild season, he's not won yet. Why not take him there? And Bell, as you said, same way. I mean, he was top 6 at both Dover and Darlington this year. We go to Road America next week. He finished second last year, or second or third. You got New Hampshire coming up, where he did finish second to Almirola last year. So I feel like Bell is on the cusp. And while he's 20-1 and Harvick 25-1, it's kind of no brainer to have to take them both. And I think Bell, speed wise, will have a better shot than Harvick. But we could see a wreck and take a bunch of guys out too, and then Harvick sitting there with the lead. So you never know what's going to play out. And while you're getting a past series champion at 25-1, you might as well take it.
Well, this is interesting, and again, we have the race at the Coke 600 that put it over the hump as far as our fantasy team. And I just want to see what the actual numbers were that week, because that was just that was, what race was that? Coke 600 race. It was 14 on our list. Okay, so that was Denny Hamlin one, right? Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can get it right here.
Yeah. Yep. So, because I was gonna say, our trade. Look at our trade, the blockbuster trade we made earlier this year. Harvick and Reddick, and Larson and Kurt Busch.
Yep.
Now Kurt's got to win. Harvick and Reddick, no wins yet. But Harvick, since the time that we made the trade, Harvick actually leads Larson by 10 points.
Yep.
And Reddick leads Kurt Busch by 65 points. I don't think you would have thought that. No. Because Kurt Busch has been actually picking up things. You know, he's got the win. He's definitely a lot better than he was when I traded him. But again, I was fortunate enough to have Reddick finish 6th in a bonus and Harvick finish 3rd in a bonus that week, which helped my points. Larson finished 9th, and I don't remember where Kurt Busch finished. But that, I don't 31st. Think you would know. 21st, so you don't really get nothing. 31st, so you get nothing.
31st. Yep.
So obviously that was a big, but still, it just shows you how even the trade still is at this point. Yep. And it also shows you how consistent Harvick has been in fantasy, as opposed to not even coming close to winning a race really this season.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Harvick really since, Talladega, 10th, 9th, 4th, 15th, 3rd, 33rd, Gateway, 4th. And you look at Kurt, 32nd, 16th, 31st, 28th.
He's got a lot of those 0-point races.
Yep, yeah. 31st, 3rd, 18th. So Harvick, granted, Kurt got a win. Harvick's been more consistent. And I think that's what you're seeing. And that's where Kurt, we talk about this a lot. Kurt's good, give you one a year. He's going to get into the play. Well, if there's not more than 16 winners, he's going to get you in the playoffs. Yeah. But this is what you see out of him, where Harvick is just, he knows what he can get out of the car now. You know what? I'm good at 7th. I'm not going to get any more. I'll just get a top 10. I'll just points my way through here. Well, eventually, as this season has happened, he might need a win. He might need a win to get into the playoffs. It's just weird to think that Kevin Harvick hasn't won since 2020, when that was his 9th win on the Bristol concrete track in that playoff race of the season, and he's not won since. He's not even won a stage since 2020. So at some point, these finishers are great. He's going to have to win something.
And this is the perfect week for him to try and do that on this type of track.
It is.
So it's important that he has a good race, or else you might think that, well, if he can't do it this week, when is he going to do it? By the way, the next driver up is Kurt Busch at 25. You actually put money both on Busch at 25 and Suarez at 30. Kurt had to spin out at Dover this year, so no points out of Kurt Busch at Dover this year. And then he finished 8th in this race last year, and Darlington also did not perform well. So why did you go with Kurt Busch and Suarez? To me, I think you're asking a little bit too much to have winning back-to-back races.
I thought that. I was like, he's never won one. It'd be that stat with Suarez, like he's 0 for 294, but now he's 2 for 2. Yeah. Like, it's like he can pull that. He was 7th in this race last year. He was 10th in Dover. He was good at Darlington. He's coming off of a win. So I'm like, sometimes a guy just needs to see, like I was talking about this in the month of May, IndyCar drivers, like Dixon included. Sometimes in a basketball term, you have to see the ball go in the hoop. And once you see it go in and open, like you can be 0 for 10, but once you see the ball go in, whether it be a layup, a free throw, something, it changes. we'll see if Suarez is that way. Did he see, now that he's seen the ball go in the hoop, he's won. Now he knows what it takes. And this is a good track. And remember, Suarez was always good at Bristol. He likes concrete. He was good at Darlington. And he's good at Dover. So for 30-1 for a guy that's coming off of a win, it is asking a lot, but it's 30-1 for those. I threw that aside and took it. And then Kurt, I feel like Toyota's picking up on their 1.5 mile program. Granted, this isn't a true 1.5 mile. It's a 0.2 miles shorter. But I thought this going into Kansas that he was nowhere near ready to win, and he goes out and wins. So I thought for his odds, it's a gamble. But again, this is why it's gambling. We'll throw a little bit of money his way and see if we can win. He was kind of my throw off. Let's see. I had some money left, and do I throw it more on the top guys, or do I just try to get as close to breaking even? So I took him.
Well, no doubt it helps to have a little bit more variety, especially this year when you never know what's going to happen. Nobody took the 40-1 or 50-1 drivers, Almirola, Briscoe, or Cindric. Who do you like out of those three the most?
I do like Almirola. He won the pole here last year. He's fourth in the race. On the season, he's kind of slowed down. I mean, he was fifth in Gateway. So, yeah,
but he didn't do anything last year, and then he just comes out and wins one of those races. So it's like, okay.
He won New Hampshire. Yeah. So I thought, this is a good track for him, but I took Kurt because he's a little more reliable. And plus, Kurt, I feel he may, if he's in the chance to just throw the Hail Mary and go for a win, he might do that, knowing that he's battling for that final. He gets a second win. He doesn't have to worry anymore. Yep. So he might be in a position to go for it. Almirola, he's still kind of pointing his way in. And that fifth was his only top 10 even since he was eighth in Martinsville. So he's kind of reeling. That's why I didn't take him because of that. And Cindric, I mean, again, 2 top 5s all year. One's a super speedway, one's a road course. I just don't see him magically turning it on this weekend.
The good thing for Cindric is he's in his best stretch of his season with 3 top 11s in his last 4 races.
Correct.
So
he only had 3 in 14 races.
So he needs to keep this up. If he keeps this up, he's going to be fine. But
granted, he's points racing like Busch is, so he could get in a position too. He's got to get stage points. So they're going to have to get stage points and fight against each other. But you may at some point, okay, we got our stage points. Maybe let's go off sequence in the final stage. And at this point, what's it matter if finishing 12th to 15th? Maybe I pit here and hope for a caution and fluke my way. I think that's the position those guys are going to be in the second half of this race, because a second win, again, goes a long way. It takes you off that bubble. Because if you just points race, you're always sticking to that bubble. But at some point, you're going to have to – you might want to go for that win. This might be the race. Maybe next week at Road America, but this one, if the situation arises, you might take it.
At 60-1, I was surprised that I was the only one to take Dylan. Nobody took Kozlowski. We still haven't – even though we finished 10th last time out, we still don't feel Kozlowski is worth any of our hard-earned dollars. But Dylan, he's hanging around as usual. He's driving a Chevy. So I figured, again, he's getting good odds at 60-1. So I figured I'll throw a couple bucks on him.
I almost did, but I went Stenhouse and Jones away instead. Dylan, I feel like, is your safer bet out of the ones. It's just he hasn't had a top 5 since Talladega, and the last one before that was Martinsville. So it seems their Achilles heel is maybe – I mean, granted, he was 9th at Darlington. He does have a top 10 there, but that's really the only top 10 since Easter. So I just don't trust him yet. Eric Jones, he's 10th at Dover. He's typically good at Darlington. He won the Southern 500 in the past. It seems like their 1.5 mile program, he was 3rd. Granted, intermediate is what we call it now. He was 3rd in Fontana, 31st in Vegas, but that's construed because, remember, he was top 10. He got in a wreck there at the end. So I feel like their 1.5 mile program is pretty good. Same with somebody like Stenhouse. That's why I went their way.
Yeah, we all put money on Stenhouse and Jones, 80-1 and 100-1. Stenhouse's numbers are down to 50-1 on the sports books, which I'm not surprised. 80-1 was ridiculously high, considering 6th in this race last year, 2nd at Dover, and we talked about
8th at Darlington.
and we talked about this a week or two ago, the whole reason to hang on to Stenhouse these last couple of weeks for me was this race, really, is that he actually has a chance to do something here. And if he doesn't, then I'll consider dropping him if he doesn't even finish in the top 10 or top 15. But this is a good shot for him. And if he's going to get into the playoffs, he has to have a good race on Sunday.
He's got 4 top 10s this year. 3 of them intermediate tracks. He's good 10th in Fontana, 8th in Darlington, 8th in Kansas, 7th in Charlotte. These are his tracks. The other one, a runner-up in Dover, which we said translated well over last year. So, yeah, for him to open up the 80-1, I thought, like, wow, they're just looking at names. And I feel like he's always 80-1. They just kind of just leave him. And then people probably started like, oh, I'm jumping off. We better drop it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, 80-1. So, yeah, I thought that was no-brainer to go his way for 80-1.
And then the only other 2 drivers that we put money on, Haley at 500-1 and McDowell. So we both put money on Haley. And again, Haley's, well, what was your reasoning for going and even just putting $1 or $2 on Haley and McDowell?
Well, he was such a, you could throw $1 and overcome. But he was 11th at Dover and 3rd in Darlington. He's good on these tracks early this year. And I just feel like such a chaotic season, I would not be shocked if Justin Haley came out and won this race with just what we've seen. And he's good on these tracks.
I mean, look at this.
McDowell,
he has 6 top 15s in his last 8 races.
Yeah, he's right there. Yeah.
The only time that he went the other way was when I had him on my team for a couple of weeks. But if he actually does well this week and Stenhouse doesn't, I might pick him up again and drop Stenhouse.
Yeah, you never know. I mean,
and
especially
McDowell,
for this next stretch.
It could be McDowell.
Yeah, McDowell, people don't realize in the overall points, he's 20th. He's all the way up to 20th just on points alone. I mean, you got to go back to Bristol Dirt, 9th, 8th, 17th, 7th, 23rd at Kansas, 8th at Charlotte, 18th at Gateway, 3rd in Sonoma. That is
5
not
top
like
10s in his last 8 races. He's never been that good.
No, and they feel like in one of those, 7th at Darlington. And I feel like a track like this, and this is the reason I thought too, we saw at Dover that in Darlington too, with his new car and the speeds you carry on a concrete track is a little more rough. Naturally, you're racing on concrete. And you saw issues. People spin, people lose it, they get in wrecks. I feel like those kind of guys are more careful with their car because they're on a smaller team and you let everybody else take themselves out. That, I have a feeling, could happen, and they're going to be right there again. As you said, they're around the top 10, top 15 every week now. Now you know they're there. Well, what happens if guys that are in the top 15, top 10, top 15 in front of them take each other out? Now you're just putting them further and further up the field. You get a late race restart. They're right there. So for their odds, as low as they were, which to me, for them, feels kind of disrespectful, you got to take it all day and run.
They're 300-1 now. Haley's 150-1. But those are still, you have to put $1 on both of them. You have to.
You got to. And I would do it now because who's to say in qualifying they don't jump out and qualify in the top 15?
All of a sudden it's 70-1 or 60-1.
Yeah. And you could have had it for 300-1 earlier in the week. So yeah, they're two. Yeah, they're in that category where they're almost in mine. And I didn't take them this week because I just don't trust them. Is the Cole Custer disrespectful being way low categories. But Custer, I mean, he doesn't have a top 10 still. I mean, since I've been doing this, he doesn't even have a top 20. So I'm like, I'm going to punt on this week.
Yeah, and that is just not a good deal right now. I mean, because if you take a look at it, it's, you're on Kevin Harvick's team, and Almirola's doing his usual, hanging around. Briscoe has had his good moments this year. So he's doing his part, but Custer has been an absolute disaster. And I just can't imagine, if this continues the rest of the year, I can't imagine with all the other parity there is in the sport, why would they bring him back next year?
Oh, because of his dad. If his dad wasn't a big part of that team, I don't think he'd be there. I mean, you look at the points right now, he's behind Ty Dillon. That guy hasn't been full-time in a couple. He's got 1 top 10. Bubba Wallace is not – I mean, Bubba's with Jordan Brand, but and the Hamlin team, but he's ahead of him. Stenhouse, single car team, ahead of him. Justin Haley's ahead of him. Michael McDowell's ahead of him. I mean, like, you're a Stuart Haas driver. You're a couple of years ago, that was one of your big teams. And I know they've taken a little bit of step back, but like you said, Harvick's up front every week.
Yeah, it's
Almirola,
not good.
No. And Briscoe's already won. And especially this year, I feel when everything's more in a level playing field, nobody really has an advantage. Everybody's changing driver styles and all that. This should suit him. You should not be in an SHR car and sitting 27th in points as we near the midway mark. That shouldn't happen.
And with Bubba, you really have to know what you're doing nowadays when you get involved with an athlete in Bubba Wallace's situation in NASCAR. Being black, the whole ridiculous thing that happened with the noose, which was so ridiculous. And it's, thank goodness we haven't heard anything about any of that stuff this year in the sport. But you take them on, you're going to get a boost with a certain level of people in your marketing campaigns. Mm-hmm. But sooner or later, you have to start producing. And what happens when the time comes when they say, all right, we got to cut the cord? Then you're going to get backlash. Then the people that praised you for signing him are going to slam you. And they're going to say it's all racial.
This is where it's big with being with Jordan Brand. Granted, he's good another year. But it also, I wondered how much pressure Kurt Busch was going to put on him by bringing a guy in. Granted, he's a champion. We know Kurt Busch, like we talked, he's good for a win a year. And he got that win. But you also look, he was third in Gateway. Sure. He's finished sixth. He's finished fifth. He's finished third. He's finished eighth.
Got 4 top 5s.
Bubba's got 1.
If Bubba had 4 top 5s, he'd be fine.
Yeah. It's just like now, one guy's performing. Granted, Kurt's not performing on a consistent level because we've mentioned the 30th worst finishes. But he's still finding ways to get something out of that car where Bubba's not. That's the next progression for Bubba is like, look, we know these are not race-winning caliber cars. The odds of they're slim to none. Granted, he was good in Kansas, and he's had pit crew problems all season. That's part of the problem, which is out of his control. But the other stuff, it's like you need to get like the McDowells, the top 10 to 15 range, and he's still not getting there right now. I mean, 4 of his last 5 finishes have been 26th or worse. I mean, you at some point, especially driving for Michael Jordan, we know what his mantra, he's a winner. You think of Michael Jordan, you think of a winner. He's not going to hang around with this long, especially when his new driver has already won for him.
Yeah.
In just a few. So,
and by the way, if they let Wallace go, it should be Michael that steps up to the podium and makes the announcement. That'll help the backlash a little bit. If Michael's actually the one doing the firing or doing the contract's up, we decided to go in a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, because Michael's going to get sponsors no matter what. Michael, I mean, he's got his own shoe brand, like we saw in Kurt Busch's car. It doesn't matter who's in that car. Yes, Bubba helps to bring sponsors, but at some point, your sponsors want to see you win.
You have to.
They want to see it. And being runner-up in Daytona was a good start, and then he's Daytona, had nothing since.
Even though that's kind of where did he win last year?
Talladega,
and wasn't that rain or something too, or?
It was, but he had a good enough car to win his place.
But he's always competitive at
those tracks, and
then he never wins.
And I'll say this, and I don't have all the stats to dive deep in it in front of me. It's going to be a future burning question pretty soon if things don't change. But is Bubba Wallace Danica Patrick? Good on super speedways, similar results off of them. I haven't dove into the results, how similar they are. But off the top of the head, don't you kind of similar? I mean, Danica, you always knew was going to be good at Daytona and Talladega. Then always knew away from them, she might get you a top 10 once every 2 or 3 months. Yeah. But she brought funding. Is Bubba entering that category? We hope not. But is he? Because I feel like he can bring eyeballs to this sport.
Absolutely.
He's just got to figure out a way.
It would be good if he would do it. We're not rooting against him. It would be great for the sport if he would. He's got 3 top 15s on his season.
Yeah.
That's all he has to do is try to get top 15s on a consistent basis, and he'd be fine.
Yep. I mean, I love to see the McDonald's car in victory lane more often. I mean, that is what sells. They'll make the little die-cast car, and you get people. That's that kind of stuff. But when the car is 20th to 25th, they're not going to put a lot of money into it. Why would McDonald's make a bunch of stuff out there and like, well, we're not getting exposure on it. We need to get the car up front. So, granted, first year of the next gen, new teammate. I feel like next year there's a lot riding on him. If this year finishes the way that it's gone, well, it's like, all right, you're going to get a third year, but I don't know if you're going to get a fourth. If it's going to put pressure next year, is almost a must
race
win
like
at some
this
point.
for the next year and a half and get another contract. That's
no, because there's too many. Toyota needs that seat. We've seen Toyota because they don't have the fleet. They've got 4 at JGR, and that's why they had to get a second at 2311. And you got these younger guys. I mean, they cut Matt Kenseth. They got rid of Edwards, and Eric Jones was sent off too early, I feel like, for Christopher Bell. Well, we know Ty Gibbs is coming. We know John Hunter Nemechek can come through. Only so many guys are going to retire, so you might need that seat. You might need that seat. So in order to keep your seat, get top 10s. Be a contender.
Road of America's next week. Oh, I have to ask this question before I let you go. Why am I seeing something completely off here? Why is this race at 5:00?
Yeah, it's one of my burning questions this
what
week. Is
in
why
the world is that about?
I don't know. I don't know why
5
so
o'clock?
late in the day. We keep talking about one earlier. Now, last year was 3:30. Now we get 5.
There's nothing
5
going on Sunday, right?
No, IndyCar is off. F1's off. Yeah, I don't.
There's nothing on from 12 to 5, and except some golf tournament that nobody really is going to care much about after the U.S. Open.
That's what I was going to say. I don't know how they got put on. I know it's got to be NBC driven because NBC doesn't want to start their broadcast out on USA.
You know what?
Is there something on NBC?
The LPGA has a major this week.
There you go.
I bet you NBC has it.
Yep. NBC, I bet you if you look, has got the major. Yep. So it bumps. They had to get a window.
Had to be something.
But still, that doesn't seem very good because I wrote about at 5:00, you're not going to get, because where Nashville is, you can get a lot of people from my neck, Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Louisville, St. Louis, Knoxville, the Carolinas. It's kind of centralized where you can get a lot of fans. But 5:00, you're not going to get that fan. Like, they're going to be thinking the same thing. 3 hours, it puts me at 8 Eastern. Give me an hour or so to get out of traffic. That's 9:30 before I'm even out of the parking lots. And I still have at least 4 hours to get home. Now we'll watch it on TV. And at 5:00, how many are watching on TV? So that's one thing. And my other part coming out is, do we need some chaos coming out this weekend? Because this is on NBC, but out of the next 9 weeks, 7 of them are on USA.
Ugh.
They're not even on NBC. And we saw how many people did not watch the IndyCar race on USA. NASCAR needs something to get you, because as people are streaming now, like I know in my Hulu, I could go to sports. Well, a lot of times I'm shifting through the guide down. How many people have the patience to get all the way down to the use?
That's ridiculous.
Or they just give up. So does this race, you kind of need some chaos coming out of it, don't you? When you know the next several weeks are going to be on USA.
1 to 4 NBC. LPGA Major Championship coverage.
There you go.
Hey, maybe if they go to overtime, maybe the playoffs and the LPGA, wouldn't that be funny? They only have an hour window, but knowing NASCAR, they'll just we'll start at 5:30 or 5:45. We'll just push it a little bit further.
Or here's the, and I get, because TV ratings aren't as good on Saturday nights, but could you not put it on Saturday night?
Yeah, you would think you could play it right after the LPGA. That would be perfect. For a Saturday time slot would be perfect for 5 or 6 o'clock.
Or it's summer. If you market it right, Sunday Night Football seems to work on NBC. Can you do a rare Sunday night NASCAR? Could you do a prime time under the lights at least Sunday night? Like, give you some. There's nothing else on. You're going to watch probably a crappy baseball game on ESPN. I mean, what else is on Sunday nights?
So what does that end?
On summer?
It'll be over 8 o'clock.
Yeah, probably around 8.
Well,
I'd rather start at 8 than end it, because 5 is just a weird time.
It is.
But that's a weird time for a summer race.
I don't know. We'll see how the ratings go. I'm not sure. I guess it all depends. I guess if
you get another, and that's the other factor of this. If you get another Kyle Larson led all but 36 laps last year. There wasn't a lot of action.
That was a disaster.
If you get that type of race at a 5 o'clock start, ratings won't be as great. I wonder the future of this race. Maybe this is the one that eventually gets bumped.
Yeah.
I feel like they're set up for failure this year.
Well, let's hope. Well, look, I think we'll get a better race after what we got last year. So keep our fingers crossed regarding that. And next week, it's Road America. So who's the defending champ?
Chase.
Oh, okay. So we'll see if.
But here's what's good. Again, it doesn't make. I don't know what's on NBC next Sunday afternoon, but IndyCar at noon is on NBC. Why is NASCAR at 3 not on NBC? It'd be great to have them both.
So it's on
Instead,
USA
NASCAR
next week?
Yeah. And I don't know what's on NBC at 3:30 next week. That's after IndyCar, but it'd make a lot more sense. Road America, 4th of July weekend, America, NASCAR there. Instead, you're bumped to USA.
I don't know. I don't know if there is anything. Oh, yeah. Wait. Starting next Monday, and NBC does have coverage of Wimbledon.
There you go. Well,
2 weeks of Wimbledon, including over the 4th of July weekend. They usually have all sorts of.
Would that be tape delay though?
Actually, Wimbledon doesn't play on a Sunday.
I didn't think so.
Plus, they have Sundays off.
They're 5-6 hours ahead, aren't they?
And they are ahead. They usually start around 9 o'clock in the morning.
So if IndyCar is at noon, IndyCar would be over at 2.
But again, they don't have Wimbledon on Sunday.
So I don't know what would be on.
Yeah.
To me, it makes more sense to have NASCAR on after IndyCar on July 3rd. Makes a lot more sense. But
yeah,
what do we know?
You could have Wimbledon, IndyCar,
NASCAR. Makes too much sense.
I don't know why we're here and they're there, but it is the way that it is. That's life.
Yep.
Okay, sounds good, Eric. Great job as always. We'll talk to you next week, and no more weeks off. So there's that.
20 straight weeks to the finish.
There you go. We'll be here every step of the way. We'll talk to you next week.
Yep. All right, sounds good. Thank you.